Taking responsibility for yourself is one of the most fundamental principles of living a meaningful and productive life. It is the recognition that your actions, decisions, and mindset directly shape the trajectory of your existence. Too often, people fall into the trap of blaming external forces for their struggles. Society, their upbringing, their circumstances, or even just bad luck. While external factors certainly influence our lives, fixating on them as the primary cause of our problems leads to stagnation, resentment, and a loss of personal agency. Responsibility begins the moment you stop making excuses and acknowledge that, regardless of where you start, it is your duty to improve. This is not an easy truth to accept. It is far more comfortable to believe that your failures are the result of forces beyond your control. But the moment you accept responsibility, something remarkable happens. You reclaim power over your life. If your problems are entirely someone else's fault, then you are helpless to fix. But if you recognize that your choices play a role, you suddenly gain the ability to change. Taking responsibility does not mean ignoring the real difficulties and disadvantages that life throws your way. It does not mean pretending that suffering does not exist. On the contrary, it means recognizing suffering as a fundamental part of life and deciding to confront it head-on rather than allowing it to define you. Life is difficult, unfair, and often brutal. But within that reality lies the opportunity for growth, strength, and transformation. When you choose to take responsibility, you are choosing to face that hardship with integrity and courage. One of the first steps in personal responsibility is owning your past mistakes. People often deceive themselves, pretending that their bad habits, poor decisions, or failures are someone else's fault. But until you acknowledge where you have gone wrong, you cannot correct your course. If you have been lazy, admit it. If you have treated people poorly, own up to it. If you have let fear hold you back, recognize it. Honesty with yourself is painful, but it is necessary. Without it, you remain blind to the areas in your life that need change. Once you accept responsibility for the past, you must then take control of the present. This means setting your own standards rather than waiting for others to dictate them to you. Too many people drift through life, waiting for permission to act, waiting for the right moment, or waiting for someone to fix things for them. But waiting leads to nothing but regret. You must take charge of your own actions, no matter how small. Start by organizing your immediate world. Get your routine in order, set clear goals, and develop the discipline to follow through. Small, consistent steps in the right direction create momentum, and momentum builds into real progress. Discipline is at the heart of responsibility. It is easy to talk about making changes, but without discipline, those words are meaningless. True discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. It is getting up early when your body wants to stay in bed. It is going to the gym when you'd rather watch TV. It is working hard on a project when distractions tempt you. The more disciplined you become, the more control you have over your life. And the more control you have, the more freedom you ultimately gain. Taking responsibility also extends to how you interact with others. Blaming your parents, your teachers, your boss, or your friends for your struggles might provide temporary relief, but it does nothing to improve your situation. Instead, focus on what you can change: your attitude, your actions, and your reactions. If you find yourself surrounded by negative people, take responsibility for removing yourself from that environment. If your relationships are strained, take responsibility for how you communicate and treat others. The way you engage with the world will determine how the world responds to you. Another key aspect of responsibility is learning to accept failure as part of growth. People often fear failure because they see it as a reflection of their worth. But failure is inevitable, and more importantly, it is valuable. Each failure provides an opportunity to learn, adjust, and improve. If you take responsibility for your failures instead of making excuses, you turn them into stepping stones for success. But if you refuse to accept responsibility, failure becomes a source of bitterness and self-pity. Taking responsibility does not mean that everything in life will suddenly become easy. In fact, it will likely make things harder in the short term because it forces you to confront uncomfortable truths. But it also makes you stronger. It builds resilience, confidence, and self-respect. The more responsibility you take, the more capable you become. Ultimately, the choice is yours. You can either allow life to happen to you, blaming others for your struggles, or you can take ownership of your existence and forge your own path. No one else can do it for you. The moment you decide to take responsibility for yourself is the moment you begin to truly live. Life is naturally chaotic. It is unpredictable, overwhelming, and often unforgiving. If you do not take conscious control over your actions, thoughts, and surroundings, chaos will creep in and take over your life. This is not just a metaphor. It is a reality that manifests in both small daily struggles and large, life-altering failures. Without structure, discipline, and intentional effort, disorder begins to spread, turning potential into wasted opportunities and ambition into frustration. Chaos does not come all at once. It starts subtly. It begins when you let small responsibilities slide. Maybe you neglect a task at work, telling yourself you'll get to it later. Maybe you avoid an uncomfortable conversation with a friend or family member because you don't want to deal with conflict. Maybe you let your diet slip or put off exercise, convincing yourself that one missed day won't matter. Each of these moments seems insignificant on its own, but together they build momentum. Suddenly, the work piles up, relationships become strained, and your health declines. Before you realize it, the small pockets of chaos you ignored have grown into a storm that threatens to overwhelm you. One of the most dangerous aspects of chaos is that it breeds more of itself. Disorder leads to stress, and stress leads to avoidance. When people feel like their problems are too big, they often retreat. Instead of addressing the root cause, they distract themselves with entertainment, social media, or addictive behaviors. They push responsibilities further into the future, hoping they will somehow resolve themselves. But problems do not disappear when ignored. They grow. The undone work becomes overwhelming, the unspoken words become resentment, and the neglected habits become self-destructive. If at some point the weight of accumulated chaos becomes unbearable, when life becomes too messy, people begin to feel lost. They question their purpose, their abilities, and even their worth. Anxiety and depression set in as they realize how much they have let slip through their fingers. It is at this stage that many people begin blaming external forces, bad luck, unfair circumstances, other people for their struggles. While external factors do play a role, personal responsibility cannot be ignored. More often than not, the chaos in one's life is a result of neglecting the necessary daily efforts that maintain order. The antidote to chaos is structure. It is discipline. It is routine. It is setting clear goals and following through with them, even when you do not feel like it. This is not about making life rigid or overly controlled. It is about creating a foundation strong enough to withstand the unpredictability of the world. When you establish order in your own life, you are better equipped to handle unexpected challenges. You can respond to difficulties with clarity rather than panic. Taking control of chaos starts with small, consistent actions. Begin by organizing your immediate surroundings. Clean your room, manage your schedule, prioritize your responsibilities. These may seem like trivial tasks, but they serve as a signal to yourself that you are taking control. When your environment is in order, your mind follows. When you prove to yourself that you can manage the small things, you develop the confidence to tackle larger challenges. Beyond physical order, mental discipline is crucial. Chaos often thrives in the mind before it manifests in the external world. Negative thought patterns, procrastination, and self-doubt are all forms of internal disorder that lead to external consequences. If you do not take control of your thoughts, they will control you. Develop habits that sharpen your mind. Read, reflect, and engage in meaningful conversations. Train yourself to recognize when you are avoiding responsibility and confront it directly. Relationships are another area where chaos can take root if not carefully managed. Unresolved conflicts, unspoken frustrations, and broken commitments can turn friendships and families into battlegrounds. If you do not address problems as they arise, they fester. Over time, minor disagreements become irreparable divisions. Maintaining healthy relationships requires effort, honesty, and the willingness to have difficult conversations. Avoiding discomfort in the short term leads to much greater pain in the long run. Perhaps the most important step in combating chaos is defining a purpose. When people lack direction, they drift. And drifting is dangerous because it allows external circumstances to dictate the course of life. When you have a clear goal, you have a reason to maintain order. You wake up with a purpose. You prioritize your time and energy effectively. You make decisions that align with your long-term vision rather than indulging in short-term distractions. Purpose gives you the motivation to push through discomfort and face challenges head-on. However, order is not about eliminating all chaos. Some degree of uncertainty is necessary for growth. A life that is too rigid becomes lifeless. The goal is not to suppress chaos entirely, but to balance it with structure. Think of it like taming a wild animal. You do not destroy it, but you train it to work for you rather than against you. Some unpredictability is what makes life exciting, but without discipline, that excitement turns into disorder and suffering. Ultimately, you have a choice. You can let chaos consume you, or you can impose order on your life. You can allow yourself to drift, or you can take control of your path. Every decision you make, no matter how small, either moves you towards structure or deeper into disorder. The more you take responsibility, the more control you gain, and the more control you have, the more capable you become of handling whatever life throws at you. Life is filled with challenges, difficulties, and suffering. No one escapes hardship. And trying to avoid it only leads to stagnation and emptiness. Yet, within that struggle lies something profound: meaning. Struggle is not just an obstacle to happiness, it is the very thing that gives life purpose. Without struggle, there is no growth, no sense of achievement, and no deeper fulfillment. The most meaningful aspects of life are often the ones that require the greatest effort, sacrifice, and endurance. People often chase happiness, believing that if they can eliminate struggle, they will find peace. They imagine that if they had more money, fewer responsibilities, or an easier life, they would be content. But happiness is fleeting. It comes and goes based on circumstances, and the more you pursue it directly, the more elusive it becomes. True fulfillment does not come from avoiding hardship, but from confronting it, overcoming it, and transforming through it. Struggle forces you to grow. When you face difficulty, you are required to develop new skills, strengthen your character, and push beyond your current limits. This is why the most accomplished individuals in any field are those who have endured the most setbacks. A musician does not become a master without years of practice. An athlete does not reach the top without pain, discipline, and sacrifice. A successful entrepreneur does not build a business without failure, doubt, and perseverance. The struggle refines them. It forces them to become better, stronger, and more capable. Without it, they would remain weak and untested. The same principle applies to personal development. If you never challenge yourself, you remain stagnant. If you never take on responsibility, you never experience the deep satisfaction that comes from earning something through effort. Imagine two people, one who is handed everything in life without having to work for it, and another who builds their success from the ground up through years of dedication. The first person may experience temporary pleasure, but the second person experiences something much greater, a sense of earned pride, of knowing they overcame obstacles and became someone capable and resilient. One of the most powerful aspects of struggle is that it gives life depth. Imagine a story where the main character never faces any obstacles, never experiences loss, and never has to fight for anything. It would be a boring, meaningless story. The most compelling stories, the ones that inspire us, are those where the hero must endure great hardship, suffer setbacks, and ultimately rise above them. Our own lives follow the same structure. If everything were easy, nothing would matter. It is the difficulty, the pain, and the effort that make our achievements meaningful. Struggle also connects people. Shared hardship creates bonds that cannot be replicated through ease and comfort. Soldiers who have fought together in war, athletes who have trained side by side for years, and families who have endured tough times together form relationships that are deep and unbreakable. There is a reason that people who go through great suffering together often develop the strongest connections. Because struggle reveals character, builds trust, and fosters loyalty. It strips away superficiality and forces people to rely on each other in ways that easy times never do. Beyond personal achievement and relationships, struggle also gives a sense of purpose. Many of the most meaningful causes in the world are born out of hardship. The people who dedicate their lives to improving society, helping others, or advancing human progress often do so because they have experienced deep struggle themselves. They know what it means to suffer, and rather than becoming bitter or resentful, they channel that suffering into something greater. They find purpose in using their pain to make a difference. A crucial part of embracing struggle is understanding that suffering is inevitable, but meaning is not. Suffering on its own does not create meaning. How you respond to it does. If you allow suffering to break you, to turn you into a victim, it leads only to despair. But if you choose to face it, to learn from it, and to use it as fuel for growth, it transforms into something powerful. This is why people who have endured the greatest hardships often become the wisest and most inspiring individuals. They have taken their suffering and turned it into strength. Some of the most fulfilling moments in life come after periods of intense struggle. The joy of achieving a goal, the pride in overcoming a challenge, the deep gratitude for what you have. These feelings do not come from comfort. They come from having fought for something, from having endured difficulty and emerged on the other side stronger than before. The key is not to seek struggle for its own sake, but to recognize its value when it comes. Rather than avoiding hardship, embrace it as an opportunity to grow. When you face difficulties, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I become stronger because of this? How can I use this struggle to build a more meaningful life? When you approach struggle with this mindset, it stops being something to fear and starts being something that gives your life depth, purpose, and fulfillment. In the end, meaning's not found in comfort, in ease, or in the absence of difficulty. Meaning is found in the struggle itself, the battles you fight, the obstacles you overcome, and the person you become in the process. Before you demand change in the world, before you point fingers at society, your family, your workplace, or the government, you must first look inward. The impulse to criticize external problems is natural. It is easy to see the faults in institutions, systems, and other people. However, it is far more difficult and far more necessary to examine yourself honestly. If your own life is in disarray, if your habits are destructive, if your relationships are strained, then your energy is better spent fixing yourself before trying to correct the world. One of the great dangers of modern thinking is the belief that the primary source of suffering is external. People blame their failures on society, their unhappiness on others, and their struggles on forces beyond their control. While external factors do play a role, this perspective robs them of personal agency. It encourages resentment instead of self-improvement. The world is full of problems, and many of them are real, but focusing on those problems without first addressing your own shortcomings leads to bitterness, hypocrisy, and inaction. When you set your house in order, you take responsibility for yourself first. This means confronting the areas of your life that are chaotic and disorganized. It means addressing your weaknesses, improving your habits, and creating stability in your personal world. If your finances are in ruin, if you are unreliable in your commitments, if your relationships are filled with conflict, what right do you have to demand order from society? Fix what is within your control before you attempt to reshape the broader world. This is not to say that large-scale issues do not matter. There are many injustices that deserve attention. But history has shown that those who create meaningful change in the world are not the ones who spend their time complaining or tearing things down. They are the ones who have first disciplined themselves, who have taken responsibility for their own lives, and who lead by example. Their authority comes not from outrage, but from competence. They have built something stable before they attempt to improve something larger. Setting your house in order is a process. It starts with small, deliberate actions. Begin with your immediate surroundings, your home, your daily routine, your personal responsibilities. If your environment is a mess, clean it. If your schedule is chaotic, structure it. If your health is deteriorating, take action to improve it. These may seem like minor tasks, but they are symbolic. They represent a commitment to discipline, to responsibility, to taking control of what you can. When you impose order on your surroundings, you develop the mindset necessary to impose order on your life. Beyond physical organization, setting your house in order requires emotional and mental discipline. Many people are consumed by resentment, blaming their past, their upbringing, or their circumstances for their current struggles. But dwelling on the past does nothing to fix the present. Instead of focusing on who is to blame, focus on what you can do right now to improve. This means being honest with yourself about your own flaws. Are you disciplined in your work? Are you treating people with respect? Are you following through on your commitments? If not, start there. Another crucial aspect of this process is strengthening your relationships. Many people criticize society while neglecting their own personal connections. They demand justice in the world while mistreating those closest to them. They call for honesty and integrity while being deceitful in their own dealings. If you want to make the world a better place, begin by improving how you interact with others. Communicate honestly. Apologize when you are wrong. Be reliable. These simple but profound actions lay the foundation for larger change. There is also a deeper philosophical reason for setting your house in order. When you organize your own life, you gain a clearer understanding of the world. Many people who are eager to criticize have never truly tested themselves. They have not built anything, they have not endured hardship, and they have not proven their own competence. Without that experience, their opinions lack depth. But when you take responsibility for yourself, you develop wisdom. You understand the complexity of problems, the difficulty of making real change, and the effort required to build something meaningful. This knowledge makes you a better leader, a more effective problem solver, and a person whose words carry weight. Furthermore, setting your house in order is a safeguard against hypocrisy. It is easy to demand virtue from others while ignoring your own failings, but integrity requires consistency. If you want honesty, be honest. If you want discipline, be disciplined. If you want a better world, become a better person. People respect those who embody the values they preach. They are far less likely to listen to someone who demands change but has no evidence of discipline in their own life. Finally, when you take responsibility for yourself, you inspire others to do the same. People do not change because they are lectured. They change because they see an example worth following. A person who has set their house in order, who has built stability, competence, and integrity, naturally influences those around them. Their very presence challenges others to rise to a higher standard. In the end, the world is a complex, chaotic place. There will always be problems that need to be addressed, but the most powerful and enduring change begins on an individual level. If you want to make a difference, do not start by tearing things down. Start by building yourself up. Set your house in order. Create stability in your own life. Master your own chaos. When you do that, you will be in a position to offer real solutions, not just criticism. And perhaps more importantly, you will live a life of discipline, meaning, and purpose. regardless of what happens in the world around you. Great achievements are rarely the result of sudden bursts of effort. They are built over time through small, repeated actions that accumulate into something significant. Whether it is mastering a skill, improving your health, building a career, or developing strong relationships, consistency is the key to success. The future is not shaped by what you do once in a while, but by what you do every day. The small choices you make, the habits you form, and the discipline you maintain determine the trajectory of your life. Many people believe that success comes from massive, dramatic actions. They wait for motivation to strike or for the perfect opportunity to appear before they take action. But the truth is, waiting for the right moment is an excuse for inaction. The right moment is now. Instead of looking for a shortcut or a quick fix, start with small, meaningful steps. These steps may seem insignificant in the moment, but over time, they create unstoppable momentum. Consider physical fitness. No one becomes strong, fast, or healthy overnight. You do not go to the gym once and suddenly transform. Instead, progress comes from small, consistent efforts. Exercising regularly, eating properly, and staying committed even when motivation fades. A single workout does not make a difference, but 100 workouts do. The same applies to learning. You cannot read one book and become an expert, but if you read for 30 minutes every day, over the course of months and years, you accumulate knowledge that sets you apart. The power of small efforts lies in their compounding effect. Just like money in a bank gains interest over time, small improvements in any area of life build upon themselves. If you improve by just 1% each day, the results multiply exponentially. At first, the progress may seem invisible. You may not feel any smarter after reading for a day, any stronger after exercising for a week, or any more skilled after practicing for a month. But over time, the difference becomes undeniable. The person who commits to steady improvement eventually surpasses those who rely on occasional bursts of effort. One of the biggest obstacles people face is impatience. They want results immediately. When they do not see immediate progress, they become frustrated and quit. This is why so many people fail to reach their goals. They underestimate the power of time. Real success requires endurance. You must be willing to put in the work even when the results are not yet visible. You must trust the process, knowing that small efforts will eventually lead to great outcomes. Discipline plays a crucial role in this process. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Some days you will feel inspired and other days you will not. If you rely only on motivation, you will never be consistent. Discipline, on the other hand, is what keeps you going when motivation fades. It is the ability to do what needs to be done even when you do not feel like it. Those who achieve greatness are not necessarily the most talented or the luckiest. They are the ones who show up every day, do the work, and stay committed for the long haul. Another key to success is focusing on the process rather than the outcome. Many people set ambitious goals but fail to establish a system for achieving them. A goal without a plan is just a wish. If you want to write a book, do not just dream about being an author. Set a goal to write a small amount every day. If you want to build a successful business, do not just envision the end result. Focus on the daily actions that will get you there. Success is not a single event. It is the result of hundreds, even thousands of small, repeated actions. This principle applies not only to personal growth, but also to relationships and character development. Strong relationships are not built overnight. They are the result of small acts of kindness, trust, and communication repeated over time. The same goes for personal integrity. A person does not become honest, reliable, or disciplined through one decision alone, but through a series of choices made consistently. The small decisions you make every day shape who you become. It is also important to recognize that failure is part of the process. No one is perfect, and no one follows a plan flawlessly. There will be days when you fall short, when you miss a workout, when you break a habit, or when you fail at something you tried. But failure only becomes permanent if you let it stop you. What matters is getting back on track, learning from mistakes, and continuing forward. Progress is never a straight line. It is a series of ups and downs. The key is persistence. Ultimately, the life you want is not built in a single moment. It is built through thousands of small moments, small choices, and small actions that compound over time. The future is not something that happens to you. It is something you create, step by step, day by day. The small efforts you make today may not seem significant, but they are shaping your future in ways you cannot yet see. Keep going, stay consistent, and trust that every small step brings you closer to the life you want to build. Life is difficult. There is no escaping hardship, suffering, and responsibility. But what happens if you refuse to face these challenges? What happens if you avoid responsibility, neglect your potential, and choose the easy path of comfort and inaction? The answer is simple. The alternative is far worse. Struggle is painful, but avoiding struggle leads to something far more destructive: stagnation, resentment, and regret. People often seek to avoid difficulty, thinking that if they remove effort and discomfort from their lives, they will find peace. But peace does not come from avoiding challenge. It comes from facing it. The person who refuses to engage with life, who shrinks away from hardship, does not escape suffering. They simply invite a different, deeper form of it. Avoiding responsibility may feel good in the short term. It may seem easier to ignore problems, procrastinate, and let others take the burden. But this choice has consequences. If you do not take responsibility for your health, it deteriorates. If you do not take responsibility for your relationships, they fall apart. If you do not take responsibility for your future, you remain stuck. A life without responsibility is not freedom. It is weakness disguised as comfort. People who reject responsibility often fall into blame. They look for external reasons to justify their stagnation. They blame society, their upbringing, their circumstances, anything but themselves. But blaming others does not change anything. It does not build a future. It does not make you stronger. It only deepens frustration and bitterness. The alternative to taking responsibility is not relief. It is powerlessness. Growth requires effort, and effort is uncomfortable. If you want to improve, you must be willing to endure difficulty. But what happens if you don't? What happens if you refuse to push yourself? You do not remain the same, you decline. A person who does not challenge themselves becomes weaker over time. Their skills diminish, their confidence fades, and their potential is wasted. There is no standing still in life. You are either growing or deteriorating. The cost of avoiding struggle is not staying the same. It is becoming less than you could be. Comfort is often deceptive. It feels good in the moment, but too much of it leads to decay. A body that is never exercised becomes frail. A mind that is never challenged becomes dull. A person who avoids all responsibility becomes dependent and resentful. The alternative to discipline is not joy, it is despair. When you choose comfort over effort repeatedly, you build a life that lacks depth, meaning, and resilience. Fear is another reason people avoid difficulty. They fear failure, rejection, or the pain of effort. But the fear of failure is nothing compared to the pain of regret. It is better to try and fail than to never try at all. At least when you try, you learn, you grow, and you gain experience. When you do nothing, you are left with nothing, except the knowledge that you could have been more. The alternative to action is not safety. It is a slow decline into mediocrity and regret. There is no path in life that is free of suffering, but there is a choice. You can either suffer the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The pain of discipline makes you stronger. It builds character, resilience, and achievement. The pain of regret, on the other hand, is empty. It is the pain of knowing you wasted time, that you avoided challenges, that you allowed fear and laziness to dictate your life. Hard work, responsibility, and discipline may seem daunting, but they bring rewards that are worth the effort. A person who works hard gains confidence. A person who takes responsibility gains control over their life. A person who faces difficulty instead of running from it becomes stronger. The alternative is weakness, dependence, and a slow descent into frustration and helplessness. This does not mean you must be perfect. No one is. Everyone fails, struggles, and makes mistakes. But the key is to keep moving forward. The alternative to trying is giving up, and giving up leads to nothing but emptiness. The smallest effort, the smallest step forward is infinitely better than doing nothing. Every time you choose action over inaction, effort over laziness, responsibility over blame, you build a stronger future. The world is not easy. Life will always have challenges. But the question is not whether you will face difficulty. It is whether you will face it voluntarily or be crushed by it. If you take responsibility, if you push yourself, if you engage with life, you gain the ability to shape your own future. If you avoid all struggle, the world will shape you, and it will not be kind. The alternative to effort is not peace. The alternative to struggle is not freedom. The alternative is a slow, painful decline into a life of regret. And that is far worse.